The rain stitched silver lines across the city as the narrator watched Evelyn Hale approach the physics lab data. She moved like a question that refused to close. Evelyn said, "If time is a river, where is its source?" The corridor hummed with power and doubt. She unlocked a drawer and found a faded photo marked with coordinates. Evelyn said, "Who left this for me, and why now?" The building's old lights flickered like uncertain memories. A storm rolled over distant rooftops, low and insistent. She thought of experiments that bent clocks without breaking them. The narrator recalled how truth can bruise before it heals. Evelyn said, "Show me the rule that time refuses to follow." Behind her, a door latch clicked like a metronome for fear. The coordinates pointed to a lecture hall where secrets had tenure. The narrator found Evelyn in the lecture hall, where dust hung like patient stars. She studied the seat numbers until patterns formed. Liam Park entered with a cautious smile and a stack of notes. Liam said, "You asked for records on closed colloquia." Evelyn nodded without looking up. The projector coughed to life and spilled equations over empty chairs. Liam said, "These talks vanished from the archive." The air carried the smell of ozone from old equipment. Evelyn said, "Someone wanted silence preserved." The narrator felt the room tilt as past and present overlapped. A slide revealed a waveform tagged with a name that mattered. Liam said, "This signature repeats at impossible intervals." The narrator traced the tension as Professor Marcus Voss arrived with a measured step. He closed the door softly, as if sealing a vault. Marcus said, "Curiosity breaks more than it builds." Evelyn kept her gaze steady. Liam said, "We found erased schedules and repeating signatures." Marcus smiled like a locked cabinet. Marcus said, "Archives rot. Patterns deceive." The projector hummed, and the waveform held its breath. Evelyn said, "Then explain the intervals that ignore causality." The room cooled around the edges of his patience. The narrator saw the weight of unspoken rules settle on their shoulders. The message arrived as a whisper in code on the department printer. The narrator watched Evelyn peel it free with careful fingers. A phrase repeated like a heartbeat. Evelyn said, "Meet where clocks disagree." Liam read the cipher and frowned. Liam said, "Basement service tunnel, midnight." The paper smelled of toner and risk. Footsteps passed in the hall, unhurried and listening. Evelyn said, "If it is a trap, it is also a door." The storm outside softened to a steady drum. The note ended with a sigil that history forgot. The narrator felt the university breathe in and wait. The basement air tasted like iron and forgotten rain. The narrator followed Evelyn and Liam past pipes that sang in low keys. A locked gate bore a plaque with a missing name. Evelyn said, "This is where the archive bled out." A cabinet rattled once and went still. Liam said, "Maya Sloane filed the last request here." The tunnel lights buzzed in tired pulses. Evelyn said, "She vanished the week the signatures began." Somewhere above, a clock chimed 11. The coordinates from the photo matched a chalk mark on the wall. The narrator felt the past lean close enough to fog the present. The narrator found Evelyn calibrating a ring of sensors that blinked like patient stars around a vacuum bell. She traced a cable and checked the clock drift with steady breath. Liam said, "Relativity is generous but never free." She smiled without looking up. Evelyn said, "Then we pay with precision." The room thrummed as pumps chased air from steel. The narrator felt theory folding into ritual as graphs woke on the console. Liam said, "If acceleration mimics gravity, our lattice must sing in tune." She tuned the laser until its beat matched a known line. Evelyn said, "Time bends where light is told to wait." A distant elevator chimed, and the lab held its breath. The display showed jitter where calm should live. Liam said, "Noise, or a signal that refuses to behave." The narrator watched Evelyn sketch a throat of space on the glass wall while equations curled like smoke. Liam said, "A traversable bridge dies under its own doubt." She kept the marker, and tapped the stress term. Evelyn said, "Unless negative pressure holds the mouth open." He flipped to a page flagged with yellow tape. Liam said, "Casimir plates, narrow gap, disciplined vacuum." The lab lights dimmed as backup power cycled. Evelyn said, "We test what we can, and we infer the rest." The hum returned like a tide that remembers the moon. Liam said, "If we're wrong, we add rumor to the archive." She returned to the bench and set 2 plates in their mount. Evelyn said, "If we're right, space whispers back." The clocks began their quiet argument across a loop of fiber that circled the basement twice. The narrator listened as pulses chased themselves and returned older by a breath. Liam said, "Special cases make strange promises." Evelyn adjusted a coupler until the jitter softened. Evelyn said, "Promises are still data." A graph crept a millimeter and would not retreat. The building's bones answered with a slow groan. Liam said, "Thermal drift can feign a miracle." She set a heat sink like a priest sets a candle. Evelyn said, "Then let us subtract every lie." The trace steadied and revealed a bruise of difference. Liam said, "It is small, but it refuses to leave." The narrator felt the room tilt toward possibility. The message arrived as a reflection in the window, letters formed by lights outside. The narrator saw Evelyn lean closer as rain mapped the glass. A figure in the doorway waited with quiet authority. Marcus said, "Curiosity tempts collapse." She did not yield the window her attention. Evelyn said, "Collapse is only a verb when measured." Liam shifted his weight and folded his arms. Marcus said, "The department will not host rumors dressed as proofs." The lab monitors ticked like metronomes for doubt. Evelyn said, "Then watch as rumor files a claim." He placed a sealed folder on the bench and paused. Marcus said, "Maya Sloane chased this path and vanished from her own days." The narrator felt the warning cross the floor like cold smoke. The folder opened to a map of experiments that folded like a paper universe. The narrator watched Evelyn trace red lines to a room that no longer existed. Liam said, "She rerouted power through a dead breaker." Evelyn lifted a photo of a ring that could be a mirror or a mouth. Evelyn said, "She tried to starve space until it thinned." The overhead lights dipped and returned with a tired sigh. Liam said, "If we follow, we inherit her risks." She stacked the pages by order of hazard. Evelyn said, "Risk is a unit with a fair price." A faint tone rose from the fiber clocks, higher than before. Liam said, "Our loop is hearing something." The narrator felt the lab decide to listen. The narrator watched Evelyn enter the administrative suite with Liam at her shoulder. A wall of framed donations glittered like quiet vows. Cassandra Reed waited, with a smile tuned to reassurance. Cassandra said, "I can clear access to sealed rooms." Evelyn weighed the words like lab mass on a careful scale. Liam said, "We need the records that outlive their dates." Cassandra slid a keycard across the desk and never blinked. Cassandra said, "Transparency is our house style, within reason." The narrator felt a draft move under the door, cool and warning. Evelyn said, "Reason ends where evidence is refused." The keycard paused at her fingertips like a coin at the edge of a trick. The narrator followed them to the library stacks where the lights hummed like distant bees. A strip of tape marked a shelf that never filled. A slip of paper waited between journals, like a heartbeat. Jonah Cade appeared in the aisle without hurry. Jonah said, "You are looking for echoes, not entries." Evelyn did not flinch as she took the note. Evelyn said, "Echoes measure the room that made them." Liam angled the paper under the lamp. Liam said, "Frequency tags tied to blackout hours." The narrator felt the air sharpen with a secret that preferred the dark. They returned to the basement where the clocks kept their private weather. The narrator watched Evelyn feed Jonah's numbers into the loop. Liam said, "If the tag is real, the drift will not hear." The graph hesitated, and then bent like a reed in hidden current. Evelyn said, "Someone played the building like an instrument." A faint relay clicked behind a rack that should have slept. Liam said, "Power draw is wrong for this hour." The hum deepened, and a monitor flashed an alert that smiled. Evelyn said, "Sabotage or a signature written with a sharper pen." The room felt smaller as possibility narrowed to a point. Cassandra met them outside the lab with a badge that opened too many doors. The narrator measured the stillness in her voice. Cassandra said, "Anomalies, love, miscalibration." Evelyn let silence do the first cut. Evelyn said, "Then, you will not mind a clean audit of the feed." Liam held the meter like a judge holds time. Cassandra said, "I can authorize a partial review tonight." The hallway light flickered once like a nervous thought. Evelyn said, "Partial truth is a mask with eye holes." Cassandra stepped closer and softened her tone. Cassandra said, "I am keeping you safe from the appetite of rumors." The sentence left a chill that did not travel alone. The narrator watched Liam unlock a forgotten media drawer in the tunnel office. A drive nested in foam, like a relic that refused burial. Evelyn said, "If this is Maya's voice, she will name the wound." The speaker hissed and then steadied into breath. Maya said, "The loop sang to itself when the building slept." A clatter in the hall made them listen twice. Jonah said, "You are not alone in hearing this." The recording continued with coordinates and a date erased by a scrape. Evelyn said, "Someone wanted her map to stutter." The air cooled as if the present had stepped back a pace. The narrator found Evelyn and Liam at the campus memorial garden where forgotten names etched stone like faint echoes. Evelyn traced a name she did not expect. Evelyn said, "Maya stood here before vanishing into absence." Liam set down a folder that trembled in his hands. Liam said, "Her file ends mid-sentence, like a voice cut short." A low wind bent the trees with brittle whispers. The lanterns flickered and shadows stretched long. Evelyn said, "Her tragedy is not in her loss but in what she carried unseen." The narrator felt the garden remember with its own silence. Liam said, "If her knowledge fractured, she left us shards to follow." The narrator followed them into the physics archive room where dust carried the scent of neglect. A broken projector lay silent, its reels tangled. Evelyn said, "Maya's last lecture lived in film, but silence cut the reel." Liam crouched beside it, brushing fragments aside. Liam said, "The fragments repeat the same phrase. Entanglement cheats solitude." The walls closed in with the weight of unsaid truths. Evelyn said her tragedy was knowing and never being believed. The narrator felt the ghost of her work press like a hand on their shoulders. A faint hum from the wall conduit rattled memory loose. Liam said she encoded warnings in the hum itself. The narrator watched Evelyn unfold Maya's old notebook, pages swollen by time. Numbers spilled across margins like restless tides. Evelyn said, "She chased an interval smaller than breath." Liam leaned closer, finger on a jagged graph. Liam said, "Her data bends space where it should stay flat." A candle flickered on the desk, though no one lit it. The air grew heavy, as if time stalled between seconds. Evelyn said she carried the burden of proof without refuge. The narrator saw grief etched into ink strokes deeper than equations. Liam said, "Her tragedy was being unheard until the silence consumed her." The tunnel beneath the lab groaned like a throat filled with echoes. The narrator followed Evelyn as she traced chalk lines that Maya once marked. Evelyn said, "She left signals here where walls remember." Liam shone his flashlight on symbols scraped deep into concrete. Liam said, "Equations turned to scars when she was silenced." A drip of water struck metal and rang longer than it should. Evelyn said, "Her tragedy chained itself to the building itself." The air cooled into breath clouds, as if the tunnel inhaled with them. The narrator felt time falter where grief carved its code. Liam said, "Every scar is a map, if we dare read." The narrator saw Evelyn uncover a sealed locker in the sub-basement, its lock rusted but resisting. With effort it yielded, revealing a box of tapes marked with Maya's name. Evelyn said, "She tried to leave a legacy louder than silence." Liam lifted a tape, dust coating his fingers. Liam said. Her voice carried warnings. We must decode. The hum of the building deepened like a pulse underfoot. Evelyn said. Her tragedy turned into a compass pointing backward. The narrator felt the air tighten as if past and present shook hands. Liam said, if she mapped time, we now walk her path. The narrator found Evelyn and Liam seated in the lab, tape spinning with Maya's voice faint through static. Evelyn said, she warned of betrayal sewn into the foundation. Liam leaned in, brows heavy with doubt. Liam said, do you mean by the system, or by someone close? The voice fractured into numbers, each repeating like footsteps behind them. Evelyn said, someone she trusted closed the door on her work. The hum of machines deepened like a heartbeat under strain. Liam said, if betrayal lingers, it walks among us still. The narrator felt the room sharpen, heavy with recognition that trust was no longer whole. The narrator followed Evelyn as she confronted Cassandra in the council chamber, long windows framing the storm. Cassandra said, Maya chased illusions and fell into them. Evelyn dropped the tape on the polished wood, its hum filling the silence. Evelyn said, illusions do not leave coordinates etched in steel. Cassandra's smile thinned like paper burning at the edge. Liam said, the signatures she found repeat tonight, in our loop. The storm cracked thunder against the glass. Cassandra said, then perhaps your loop has become her coffin too. The narrator felt betrayal harden into a mask too smooth to crack. The narrator saw Evelyn retreat into the stairwell, shadowed by Jonah's calm voice. Jonah said, betrayal wears a mask we all learn to trust. Evelyn tightened her grip on the rail. Evelyn said Maya's silence was bought, not born. Liam's footsteps echoed above, hesitant but present. Jonah said, trust no door opened by another's hand. The stairwell smelled of wet stone and electric rain. Evelyn said, if betrayal is near, I will name it before it names me. The narrator felt the stairwell hold its breath as secrets leaned closer. The narrator followed Evelyn into the lecture hall where Marcus waited with calm composure. Marcus said, you chase noise until it becomes prophecy. Evelyn spread Maya's notes across the desk. Evelyn said, noise does not carve scars in circuits. Marcus smiled thinly, eyes unblinking. Marcus said, Maya wanted too much, and the system answered with silence. Liam shifted behind her, uneasy with the weight of every word. Evelyn said, her silence is not history, it is a weapon still drawn. The narrator felt betrayal flicker like a match held too long. The narrator stood with Evelyn as the group gathered in the basement chamber where conduits throbbed like veins. Cassandra said, you see patterns because you crave them. Evelyn held Maya's tape aloft as if it were a torch. Evelyn said, patterns see us whether we crave them or not. Liam said, the loop bends again tonight, like it did before her end. Jonah watched in silence, arms folded like iron gates. Cassandra said, follow this path and you bury yourselves beside her. The narrator felt betrayal reach its climax, sharp and final as thunder overhead. Evelyn said, then let the truth bury the liar first. The narrator followed Evelyn into the core lab, where the fiber loop glowed like a coiled horizon. Pumps beat a stern rhythm against the ribs of the room. Liam said, the anomaly returns at midnight. She checked the phase meter and refused to blink. Evelyn said, then we meet it with discipline, not prayer. Jonah leaned on the doorframe like a patient verdict. Jonah said, if a hand guides this, it will show itself. The displays climbed and wavered like heat above asphalt. Marcus entered with a file, and the air lost color. Marcus said, close it down before rumor kills funding. Evelyn held his gaze until the graph steadied. Evelyn said, truth is cheaper than fear when you account for interest. The narrator felt the lab square its shoulders. The building ticked toward midnight as stormlight bled through the clerestory. The narrator watched Cassandra arrive with a smile trained to soothe fire. Cassandra said, the dean requires a halt for safety. Liam raised a log of power spikes like a warrant. Liam said safety hides better in data than in posture. Cassandra set down a key fob that could end the night. Evelyn said, "We proceed under audit and record every breath." Marcus exhaled as if permission were oxygen. Marcus said, "One sweep, then you pull the cord." Jonah watched the loop like a hunter reading wind. Evelyn said, "Begin sweep, isolate any voice, disguised as noise." The room listened for footsteps inside the signal. The sweep began, and the loop answered with a tremor, almost shy. The narrator felt the graphs lean as if gravity had opinions. Liam said, "Phase slip at the far corner, 3 meters south." Evelyn tuned the coupler with a surgeon's restraint. Evelyn said, "Hold the drift, let the shape declare itself." Cassandra moved closer, eyes following power like currency. Cassandra said, "You are chasing phantoms with expensive shoes." Jonah pointed to a relay that clicked out of rhythm. Jonah said, "There is your breath between beats." Marcus frowned, calculation tightening his mouth. Marcus said, "Close the circuit before you scorch the donors." Evelyn lifted the gain a fraction, and the room tilted. The anomaly flowered like cold fire inside the loop, and cast a hush across the steel. The narrator heard a faint tone rise as if distance were singing. Evelyn said, "Mark the crest, and hold the field stable." Liam froze the trace, and widened the window with care. Liam said, "It pulses on a schedule that ignores the clock." Cassandra's hand drifted to the key fob like a reflex. Cassandra said, "This ends if safety falters." Jonah stepped between her and the bench without heat. Jonah said, "Let the evidence complete its sentence." Marcus moved closer, curiosity cracking his caution. Marcus said, "If this repeats, my dissent thins." Evelyn nodded once, as the tone returned, older than its seconds. The tone braided into a pattern that spelled coordinates Evelyn already feared. The narrator felt the room contract as past and present overlapped. Liam said, "It points to the sealed annex behind the tunnel." Evelyn steadied her breath as if the air were a witness. Evelyn said, "We go now while the echo still lines our path." Cassandra closed her eyes, then opened them clean. Cassandra said, "I will unlock it under protest and record." Marcus shrugged off an old loyalty like a coat. Marcus said, "If she mapped this, we owe her clarity." Jonah lifted a flashlight that glowed like a promise. Jonah said, "Down we go before the pattern forgets us." The lab answered with a single, deliberate click. The narrator followed Evelyn and the others as the annex door yawned open, its hinges crying like forgotten voices. The air inside carried dust and the cold weight of secrets. Liam said, "This chamber hasn't seen breath in years." Evelyn's gaze tracked the cables that still pulsed faint light. Evelyn said, "Maya left this place alive in memory." Cassandra's voice softened against her own will. Cassandra said, "These systems were buried to keep silence, not truth." Jonah swept his flashlight and revealed a diagram carved into the wall. Jonah said, "She wrote her proof in stone when paper failed." The hum of the loop above drifted down like a reminder of the clock's defiance. Evelyn said, "We stand at the edge of her echo." The narrator felt the annex stir as if time itself shifted in its sleep. The narrator saw Evelyn kneel beside a console coated in dust, switches still live. She brushed it clean, and the screen coughed blue light. Evelyn said, "Maya left her code inside the machine." Liam typed a line, and the system echoed coordinates already familiar. Liam said, "It repeats the signature we traced upstairs." Cassandra exhaled a tremor she hid as poise. Cassandra said, "If this is true." Silence brought nothing but delay. Jonah shifted his stance, light grazing their faces like judgment. Jonah said, "Her voice returns through every line we feared to read." Marcus pressed his palm against the wall as if bracing for collapse. Marcus said, "If this is real, history must bend." The narrator felt the chamber tremble with the weight of unwritten futures. The screen pulsed and spilled a waveform that beat like a second heart. The narrator felt the group step closer, bound by the rhythm. Evelyn said, "This is her proof, written in repetition." Liam traced the peaks with his finger against the glass. Liam said, intervals no clock should tolerate. Cassandra's voice cracked under restraint. Cassandra said, she proved time could lean without breaking. Jonah's eyes sharpened with awe, his tone quiet as confession. Jonah said, every system tried to bury her, yet she carved an echo into steel. Marcus bowed his head as though hearing a hymn. Marcus said, I fought her work, but the proof outlived denial. The narrator felt betrayal dissolve into revelation, and grief reshape itself as testimony. The narrator felt the annex walls vibrate, as if time itself pressed for entry. Evelyn steadied her hand on the console, unflinching. Evelyn said, time bent for Maya, and tonight it bends for us. Liam's voice quivered with weight. Liam said, her proof demands we walk further. Cassandra closed her eyes, as if in surrender. Cassandra said, then we must share what we once swore to hide. Jonah raised the flashlight high, its beam cutting dust into stars. Jonah said, we carry her voice now, not her silence. Marcus straightened, lines deepening on his face. Marcus said, if the truth burns us, at least it burns with clarity. The narrator felt the annex pulse like a heart too big for its chamber. The narrator stood with them as the waveform folded into silence, leaving coordinates etched across the final line. Evelyn traced the numbers with a steady hand. Evelyn said, Maya gave us the map, but not the key. Liam looked to her, fear shadowing awe. Liam said, if we follow, we may never return. Cassandra whispered into the hum like confession. Cassandra said she wanted someone brave enough to risk being lost. Jonah's voice was a vow sharpened by resolve. Jonah said, then we honor her by walking where she fell. Marcus exhaled, shoulders heavy but unbowed. Marcus said, history remembers those who risk its teeth. The narrator felt the annex close like a book, but the story it held refused to end.